Hello everyone. Instead of doing part 5 first, I wanted to do an update, so this will be kind of part 4.5. So after some feedback and some further thought, I have made some changes to the blueprint. They are already updated and you can check the description. Now there is no need for quality superconductors. Instead, we're gonna just use this blueprint, that's all. We're gonna upcycle EM plants and that will give us enough holmium. Now, I will talk about the idea behind this and some stuff later, but for now, I just want to talk about the blueprint. As you see, it's a much smaller blueprint, and that's all you will probably need the entire game. You don't need to go to these blueprints. Here's the archive of blueprints I do not recommend anymore. You don't need to build this and then this anymore. So, of course, you will see that this is a much smaller, much cheaper blueprint, right? There's a lot of circuitry here, but you can freely ignore it. Now, if you remember this blueprint, this used about 55 holmium plates per second, plus a bunch of electrolyte. This thing on its own, with a single electromagnetic plant and a single recycler, so the only cost of this one is basically these modules and these modules. These are kind of optional, but with just this, you can process 10 holmium plate per second. You do need the legendary inserters, but you should have them by this point. You place this 5 times, it's still way cheaper than the other one. And for a similar throughput, it is more efficient on average. And I'll talk about the basic idea now, but I will get into the details later. The basic idea is that when it comes to how much, if you think about it, holmium, each of these three can be translated back to holmium solution, right? So yeah, holmium plate is 20 holmium solution, but because of the foundry, it's actually less. You can do the same for superconductor and the same for supercapacitor and for electrolyte. So if you do that, then you get how much holmium solution you would need here. The reason this is more efficient is because if you think about eventually my normal holmium solution, when I translate it to legendary quality items, the way you use most of the quote legendary holmium solution unquote, most of it actually goes into electromagnetic plants anyway. Like probably like 70-80%. So when you look at the numbers, this blueprint is slightly more efficient for electromagnetic plants, but slightly less efficient for everything else that you're going to get. But because most of your holmium solution goes into electromagnetic plants, on average, it is more efficient. The most important thing with this blueprint is it is much, much cheaper. And especially at a time when the quality modules themselves are really expensive still. Finally, it gets you legendary electromagnetic plants earlier, because normally we don't have legendary refined concrete at this point if we went the superconductor route. And it also gives us some legendary refined concrete, so we can use that if we want, but also we can turn that back to concrete, so it gives you also legendary recyclers earlier. You will probably place this with normal quality electromagnetic plant first and normal quality inserters, but first you upgrade the inserters, then you upgrade this, and this will increase it by 2.5 times is my estimate. So it will increase this by 2.5 times, and 25 per second is honestly going to be enough. It also has stuff here to make the superconductors and supercapacitors. The only extra thing you need is batteries you need to bring in. The rest you should be getting from recycling. The legendary holmium is here, and it will store the entire box here. And then this is a constant combinator, and this is how much it will keep of each item. Actually, it's this -1, so it will keep 100 of each of these, and so on and so forth, before this inserter sends this to a recycler. I don't think this should be your primary way to get any of these except the holmium plate. But for the holmium plate, I separate them here. Okay, so great. This is better. This is more efficient. It's cheaper, and it gets you stuff earlier. Amazing. The next thing I have changed is the tungsten plate. Here, nothing fundamental is different, but I just made it smaller and cheaper. There was no point to having a blueprint like this that could consume 126 tungsten plate per second and give you this much tungsten plate legendary. The reason is if you look at the tungsten plate recipes, basically all of them need quantum processors as well. And the main one that you will need at the start is the railguns. And you see it's a ratio of 10 to 3. This turns to 0.66 per second if you turn this to legendary quality. But even 0.33 is probably more than you can use because the bottleneck for all of those recipes is going to be the quantum processors. So that's why this is enough. If it's not enough, then upgrade this to legendary and you're fine. So yeah, just cheaper blueprint, but still more than sufficient. I have also made some minor changes to this blueprint, and there is potential to change this blueprint more substantially. You can improve the ratios here better, but I think the biggest problem is the first step. This separation makes it very inconsistent what its output is, which makes it inconsistent what these can do, and these and these. But anyway, I move things around. It's a bit more compact. I might do further work on this, but to be honest, it also works fine already. But yeah, it could be better. Lastly, I added a couple of things here. I have this blueprint. It's just you can use it if you want. If you want to design your own stuff, it's if you can use beacons optionally. If you want, if you don't want them, you can delete them. Now it does take up a bit more space here, but you know, if you want to, you can change that. It's tileable. And it has this little thing so that you can use a stack inserter if you want. It's just it does all the tricks that you can do with a recycler. So if you don't have something like this, you can use it for your own designs. I have placed in the archive blueprints I do not recommend, but you know, if people still want to use some of these things, they're free to do so. And finally, I took this blueprint, which most of you have probably seen this before. It's the Casino 1.4 from Stupid Fat Hobbit. Check him out. He has a Twitch like that, SF Hobbit. He also has a YouTube page. If you go to his YouTube page and you go onto one of his, latest Factorio videos, there should be in the description a link to all of his blueprints, and you can find the Casino version 1.4 there. It's a Google Sheet, and there you can find all of his blueprints. He has a bunch of nice things. He has very nice fusion power. I like that a lot, but I'm pretty sure this is what he's most well known for. So this is why this video took a while, because I want to use this, and this is what I use here, and this is what I use on this thing. But I was really annoyed there was an issue with those blueprints that sometimes it would get to 50% productivity and then it would switch recipes, which meant that you wasted some productivity here. Instead of getting 3 crafts, you would get 2. So that really bothered me. I didn't want to use this in my blueprints without fixing it. I didn't know if there was a way to fix it, but long story short, me along with him, but mainly me, and I don't remember his full name, but it's something mycelium on Twitch. We tried to fix it. Now mycelium fixed it first, but it's actually funny because he fixed it, but his works as well, but he went about it a different way to the way I did. But they both work. But shortly after he managed to fix it, I fixed it too. And I use my version because I'm 100% sure that this works now. I've been running it for a very long time. So it no longer will switch recipe when it's a 50% productivity. And I will get into more detail how this works for anyone that's curious later, but I don't want to lengthen the video at this point about this. There's a couple other things. One is I switched the way the recycler faces, so now it outputs directly onto the chest, and this increases the throughput a bit. You do need an extra buffer chest here, or still chest, or whatever, so that helps. Because now the recycler isn't the buffer for this inserter. It's this chest. And the recyclers are not the best buffers. And then you don't need the inserter here to take out stuff, which was sometimes way too slow. The second thing I did to increase throughput is to use this little thing. And basically what it does, and maybe I can use an example, it has these values here. And basically when I get more materials than enough to craft one item, then this will stop inserting. It does not affect the stack size, which is really nice when you're crafting things that don't need much. For example, if you're crafting electronic circuits, then it will still place 12 iron plates. You know, it doesn't go exactly how many you need. Like if you notice, it goes to 158 instead of 150. But it's good enough. This also increases the throughput quite a lot. The issue with placing more is when you switch recipes, you need to take them all out. Right, so normally, if you look at the auto insertion limit, it's 300. So if you had fast enough inserting, which if I upgrade this, it can easily be fast enough, then it would get up to like 300 and 100 here. So it was more than double the ingredients that you had to remove when you want to switch. So this does improve throughput. It varies how much, but it's really simple. It's a really simple thing. You can also use it anytime you want to insert and not overdo it. Really easy, just do the ingredients -1, connect it to this, read contents, and then just connect here and set it to set filters on a blacklist. Really easy to set up, only takes one extra slot. Now the more complex version doesn't help that much. It increases throughput about 10% when you're crafting something on like an electromagnetic plant, but when you're crafting something like electronic circuits, it's about the same. For the most part, I would recommend you use these. In the complex version, basically all of these are new, and it tries to limit the inserter further. And this is easier to see with a fast inserter in this case. So it will keep inserting as long as it's going to continue crafting a normal quality, but it's not going to insert more than, the ingredients for one. And it specifically checks after the first craft of the two, after the bonus productivity reaches 50%. And eventually, once it's able to craft something of higher quality, we can see it eventually. It will only put them up to exactly the correct number. Let's keep going. Here you go. So now it switches immediately, doesn't need to remove anything. And it does the same when you have higher quality, because you almost never gonna craft more than 2. So it minimizes a lot how many times you need to remove items. And when you do, if you only need to remove 1 stack, it doesn't affect the speed at all. Now, is this worth all of this? I would say generally no, but if you want to get the best out of these electromagnetic plants, then why not use them? And that's why I have used them here. You don't have to worry about it. It does it. It increases the throughput of this electromagnetic plant versus not using them. So why not? Also, if you do use these blueprints, be aware that you can't easily combine this with more inserters that input. You can do this very easily with this setup. You can copy this and connect the green wire going to this one with a bunch of other ones. I mean, it will insert more stuff, but it will work. It won't break. Whereas in this case, it's possible that it will break and stop working. And finally, if you do use these blueprints, I have only really tested these two. I do not give any guarantees that the other ones will work. Finally, I have one last point. If you do get to the end game, you've unlocked Legendary, but you don't have level 13 of the processing unit productivity, you don't need to start with this one. You can start with Asteroid reprocessing. That's also fine. This one doesn't need productivity, but it just improves with productivity research. I guess technically the same is true in this case, but it's really good in this case. If you start with this one, the good thing is that you do get all of the items that you can get on Novice. You get iron, you get coal, you get stone. And then for copper, the first thing you would want to quickly do with this is use the sulfur and the carbon to turn to coal, and then use that to turn to plastic, and then use this to also get infinite copper. So yeah, that's an alternative way to do it. This gets you concrete earlier as well. Okay, that's it for the updates. Next, I will go into details about how these things work and the maths around the holmium. If anyone wants to see why this is more efficient and how this circuitry works. So for any of you who don't care about that, you can skip to the next video where I will talk about science packs and some other things about quality. Okay, now let's talk about how this works. Every time a craft finishes, we can get it there. This control signal will have F equals whatever it is, not based on how many things are in the output slot, but based on how many things were crafted that specific tick. When the normal bar finishes, and this is a 50% bonus productivity, this will have a signal of 1 for one tick. When they both finish, this will have a signal of 2. You see, it has a signal of 2. And just to illustrate this point, if I rotate this guy and I do not take them out, this signal won't stay. It only stays for one tick, so it doesn't matter what you have in the output. Why is this looking weird? What is happening in the graphics? I don't know. Anyway, the working signal is plain and simple. Is the machine working? Then W is 1, otherwise it's 0. When you set recipe, how does this work? Right now, the recipe that comes in is the normal quality recipe. You can see it in the output signals, or let's go here. You can see it in the, here in the input signals. You have the electromagnetic plant, the normal quality. If I switch it now to uncommon quality, and I remove the normal quality signal, it will not switch until the craft finishes. If I'm able to craft again a second item, it will still change recipes once it finishes the first one. So for that tick when it finishes, it checks, should I change the recipe? And then if it should, then it does. Now there's another case where it changes the recipe, and that's when the machine is idle and it hasn't started a craft. When it's idle like that, there are two main reasons why it's going to be idle. Either because there aren't enough input ingredients to start one, or because the output is full. So if it's idle for one of these two reasons, it will also change recipes. Okay, so what does this tell us? If this electromagnetic plant has started crafting the second time, so after the bonus productivity has gone to 50%, and then it starts, the normal crafting bar starts, even for a single tick, it has started, then it's guaranteed that it won't change recipes until this finishes. If the first normal craft is from here to here and the second is from here to here, we want this signal to only change while the second craft is happening. We don't want to change when it finishes. We don't want to change while the first craft is happening. We don't want to change while the machine is idle. We want it to only change while it is crafting. The way to check that is we want to make sure that F equals 1 has happened, but before F equals 2 has happened. So that's a latch for anyone who knows about signals. And then we also want, while that is true, we also want the W signal to be 1. Okay. So what I have done here is that this will only update for a single tick when after F equals 1 and at the first tick when W turns from 0 to 1. Now this could be instant or it could take a while. Let's assume this was the very first craft that we've made. We just started this electromagnetic plant. All right. So F has been 0 so far. So we get there. Okay. Now F equals 1. So once the signal, gets processed with a tick rate, It sees F equals 1, so it turns on the LUTs. Now, if W equals 0, then this checkmark signal will stay. But W is now equal to 1, happens to be equal to 1, so this checkmark will only stay for a single tick. Now this is the next part. In the previous tick, the checkmark was there, and the W signal was equal to 1. And then this on the red network takes whether we are ready to craft any of the higher quality items. So for that single tick, it will output whether we have the ingredients for a higher quality. And it outputs it here. And then this is the opposite. This is a memory combinator. And if you look at the logic here, this is the exact opposite of the logic here. Right? So this will stay as it is, except when this decides to send the new information. And because of the tick delay, this clears at the same time as this decides to send the new information. So then on the next tick, this will update with the new information. And then because this can only be treated together for only a single tick, this will stay until the next time F equals 1 and W gets to 1. And that's it. Then it gets passed on to the selector combinator, and the selector combinator chooses the highest quality. I will also talk later about what I've done here with the complex versions, which increase the throughput. But I will do that at the end because I think that will interest the least amount of people. So instead, the next thing I'm going to talk about is the holmium stuff and why doing electromagnetic plants is actually more efficient on average. We need to go and check one by one what can we craft with holmium, with superconductors, and with supercapacitors. For holmium plates, we want electromagnetic plants. Just to make it easy, let's say we want 150. That's essentially the ingredients for 100 of them. So that's 15,000 holmium plate. For EM plants, we want 150K holmium plate. We want 200 for the mech armor. Let's say we want some Tesla guns. I think Tesla guns are also used in Tesla turret. They're still made in an electromagnetic plant, so whatever. Let's say we want 75 of them. That's 50. So Tesla gun, 500 holmium plate. For fusion power cells, we can make them in cryogenic plant, and I think you can use productivity on them. So for every 3, you need 1 holmium plate. They're used only in the portable fusion reactor. For each portable fusion reactor, you need 3.33 holmium plates. So how many are you gonna make? I mean, if you don't play with spiratrons, then it's essentially pointless to even bother considering it. But let's say you play with spiratrons, I mean, I don't know, but on average, it's not gonna be a lot, right? So fusion power cell. Let's just put 100 holmium plate again. Okay, now let's go to superconductor. The first thing is the quality module 3. One superconductor gives you 1.5 quality module 3s. And if you go through all of my blueprints, you basically need about 1,000 of them. So let's say 666 superconductors. Then let's go to fusion reactors and fusion generator. Now this needs about 1,000 superconductors for its gigawatt of power. So let's assume you will have about 10 gigawatts running and 10K superconductors. Okay, cryogenic plants. I don't think you need that many cryogenic plants, but let's say you need 200 cryogenic plants, another 8,000 superconductors. Next, we have the railgun. You only need 1, so that's kind of irrelevant. We already talked about the Tesla gun, but we said, 500 holmium plates, so let's add another 500 superconductors. Then we have the mech armor, so we can do another 50 superconductors. the personal roboport. How many are you gonna need? Again, it probably depends on whether you have Spyrotrons, whatever. Let's do 5,000. It's way over the top. Okay, Tesla turret. Are you gonna use more than 100 legendary Tesla turrets? I don't think so. So let's do another 5,000. Railgun turret. You can easily use over 100 for your Prometheum stuff, right? Let's do another 5,000. And also, by the way, separate this by each one. So there's lightning collectors, but let's say you use 100 of them on Fulgora. They have a very big reach when they're legendary quality. But whatever, let's do 100. 800 supercapacitors. We have the mech armor, that's another 50. Okay, portable fusion reactor, that's 25 each. Let's say you make, I don't know, 50 of them. 1250. And then we have personal battery. Let's say we make 100 of them, another 1000. And then finally Tesla turrets. What did I say, 100, so another 1000. Okay, now let's look at what happens when we have the electromagnetic plant and we want to get both out of it. So we're gonna keep the ingredient and we're gonna keep the legendary item. And these are correct if you have been following along. 50% productivity, 5 module slots. We cannot use productivity. And there is some extra stuff here, which I'll probably talk about in the next video, because I've done some other stuff that will be interesting. We get 2.2% efficiency on the item, and we get 0.75% on the holmium plate. Let's write this down. So in this case, we have 0.75% efficiency for holmium plate and 2.2 for EM plants. Now, the next thing we might want to do is translate all of these, actually all of them, back to holmium solution. So we need to go through each one of them and then see when we're crafting them, what's the productivity bonus that we get. So for holmium plate, we get from 20 holmium solution, but we get 150% productivity in a foundry. I have already done the calculations, but this is what it turns out to. So if you do 8 times 2.5, which is the productivity of the foundry, you get 20. So each one holmium plate actually is 8 holmium solution when you consider the productivity. Next, we have the superconductor. And in terms of holmium, it's just one holmium plate. So it's crafting an electromagnetic plant. So we need to multiply by 2.75. So it's one holmium plate times 2.75 times 2, because it gives you 2 in the recipe. So one holmium plate turns to 5.5 superconductors. Now in electrolyte, I'm only considering, again, the holmium solution. It's again made in an electromagnetic plant. And basically, one holmium solution gives you one electrolyte, but with the productivity, it's 1 to 2.75. This is the number you get if you do 1 divided by 2.75. One electrolyte is this much holmium solution. Now let's do supercapacitor. We have 2 holmium plate, so we need 2 times this. 2 superconductor, 2 times this. And 10 electrolyte, so 10 times this. So then if we add all of these up, but we still need to divide by 2.75 because we have an electromagnetic plant. And it turns out one supercapacitor is 8.2 holmium solution. It's basically the equivalent of one holmium plate. So now we can translate all of this back to holmium solution. And I'm going to skip ahead and add these up as well. Okay, and we're back. So in terms of electromagnetic plants, we're spending 120k holmium solution. And in terms of the rest, it's 6.4 plus 50 plus 34. So even with our exaggeration, in my opinion, compared to the electromagnetic plants, most of the holmium solution still goes to electromagnetic plants. Right, so that's 85, that's roughly 90k holmium solution versus 120k holmium solution. Realistically, this is probably not just more, it's probably at least double the rest. But we're still not done. We need to look at the actual efficiency of both of the two blueprints. So first, let's look at the blueprint with the superconductors. And here I'm even using the ideal case of no beacons. I'm using 58 holmium plate per second, 58 superconductors per second, and 905 electrolyte per second. Since we're using full productivity modules, we're in this case. And because we're using full productivity modules, there is no point considering this case for supercapacitors, because in practice, this is what we get for holmium and superconductor, and whenever we want, we can turn them to supercapacitors. So if we want to look at the output, we need to multiply this number with the efficiency of 2.57 whatever, and then divide by 60, and then divide by 100, and we get 1.5 per second. Now let's look at the electromagnetic plant. I'm going to assume that we're keeping both the legendary holmium, we don't use it to craft legendary electromagnetic plants, and we're keeping the legendary electromagnetic plants, we don't recycle them to get back holmium. So this is the case, this is what we get out of our holmium plates. Now the numbers don't matter, but let's just assume that we get 10 holmium plates per second. And then this is this much legendary holmium plate per second because of this. And then when it comes to the legendary electromagnetic plants, basically we get this efficiency, but we're not getting 0.2198 electromagnetic plants per second, but we're getting this much holmium plate for the electromagnetic plants. Now, if you want to get the actual electromagnetic plants, you need to divide this by 150, and it's about 5 per hour. But this is the efficiency that we get for the holmium going into the electromagnetic plants. The next thing we should do is show how much holmium solution this needs and how much this needs. And then maybe scale this down to the same holmium as this so that we see how much we actually get that is comparable. This is 58 times 8, 464. This is 58 times this number. Let's say 84.4 roughly. And then we do 905 times this, and we get 329. So if we sum these up, we get 877.5 holmium solution. If you go to the electromagnetic plant, it's 10 times 8, so it's 80 holmium solution per second. So we do 80 divided by 877.5, and this is the number we get. And then we need to do this number times 1.5. Next, we want to translate the superconductor per sec into holmium plate. We already know that each one holmium plate is 5.5 superconductors. So we need to divide this number by 5.5 and then add this number to this. Okay, so in one case, we need to use this much holmium plate to build everything that we have up here versus this case where we can separate them like that. Now, if you remember the totals, we need 120K to go into EM plants and about 90K to the rest. So that's roughly 4:3 ratio. I'm not sure if this will make sense to some people, but what we can do is like, in this case, since we have this efficiency for holmium plates for both of these, then we're going to multiply this number with 4 and with 3. Whereas in this case, we're going to multiply 4 with this number and 3 with this number. And we'll see which one gives a higher efficiency. So first, let's multiply this with 7. This gets an efficiency of this. Whereas in the other case, we have this times 3, plus this times 4, And if we add them together, we get 1.1045. Now you can see the efficiency is basically the same, but you can also see I've made very conservative estimates for how many implants we want versus everything else. And even in this case, the efficiency is basically the same, 1.1 versus 1.13. In a more realistic case, this is probably more efficient. It's not hugely more efficient. It might be like 50% more efficient or 30% more efficient. It's not a huge deal. It's not like it's an order of magnitude better or even twice as good. But it's better. It's even more efficient. With realistic numbers, this is more efficient. Even if you just remove the spirotrons, I don't play with spirotrons. If you remove the spirotrons, like so many of these numbers were because of spirotrons. So you can easily see how this can flip the tables, how the tables have turned. And yeah, this is just better. Okay, finally, let me talk about this circuitry. The whole goal is to minimize how many resources we have to remove when there is a recipe change, because that can reduce throughput. But the first step is here I just have a combinator that just has the ingredients at normal quality. And then this selector combinator takes the 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 input actually here, and I will explain why later and not the output, for what we want to craft next. Now, notice that when it's select for signal, it picks the highest quality of found signals. So even though like here there may be multiple input signals, although the output is always only one, it will always pick the highest quality. The reason is if we change to a higher quality here, the earliest I know, the better, because of the tick difference. Like even this one single tick matters. If you remember, this only updates when about what we're gonna craft the next two cycles of normal crafting. So similarly, this will get updated at the correct time. The output from here gives me the materials that I want. They get combined over here. I will talk about that later, but they get sent to this combinator. And now this just picks, it picks one of the four ingredients in this case, the highest one. So it will start with holmium plate. It picks that. Then it sends it over here. And this is just because I need this combinator just for delay, just because it's Factorio and I need to have a single tick delay, and I need this because you don't have enough different wires. You don't have enough colors. So I needed an extra one. And then this one sends it to the inserter. So this will read it. You see it has holmium plate, and then it will insert it. You see how it starts with holmium plate and then alternates about the other three? It always picks what am I lacking the most. And we can go into an example. You see it goes up, and once this gets to over 100, or I guess over 108, because there's already 8 here. Now, I guess I don't know, whichever one comes first in the... Yeah, next is gonna do refined concrete, I guess, because it comes first, because refined concrete is in the first tab. And I'm guessing next it will do steel, then processing unit, and then holmium, just because of the order they're in. But let's see. Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, and then it will keep like switching between them until it gets to above, 50, 50, 150, and 50. And then it keeps going if I know I'm gonna craft another one, because it passed the halfway point, and I know I'm not gonna switch recipes, so I might as well keep going because I know I'm gonna keep crafting afterwards. And now it's stopped. You know why it stopped? Because it's gonna craft this, and now it does have a signal. Wait, it doesn't have a signal. What? Oh no, it's waiting. It's waiting for the midpoint. So if at the midpoint I do have a signal for higher quality, do I? No, I don't. So it's gonna keep adding more and more. but that's part of the circuitry I haven't explained well. Now this input goes to another place, and this is for the stack size. So it takes the input, and then it translates it to the S signal, which is the stack size here. And you see as it drops, you see how this can get me to not add more materials than I want. Okay, that's the basic idea, but there's still a thing that I haven't discussed, which is the output from here, because I also have read hand contents, and it's a pulse. So that goes over here. It's subtracted. You can see it just takes these, subtracts them, and places them here. This is where it keeps track of how many ingredients are in here. This is what it gets combined with this one in order to know here how many I have left. You can see the input signals here, how they get reduced, which is, you know what, let's watch it again. Come on, there you go. Okay, now we want to make two crafts at the same time, but the problem is if instead here I had doubled these, then this one would just keep having the holmium signal until it plays 200 holmium plates, and then we would try to place the items for the rest of them. It would try to place the ingredients for as if I'm crafting one thing that has twice the ingredients, right? And I prefer placing the ingredients for the first craft first and then for the second. Okay, so in order to account for this, this is what I've come up. So this takes input from here, where we keep track of how many ingredients we have placed, except that they're minus. All right, this is what we get from the inserter. So when I've gone below these numbers, it means I have placed the ingredients for the first craft. So this means that I can start the second craft. I can start looking at how to address the second craft. So then this gets passed on to here. So if I'm in the second craft, then I output this also. And what's this? It's just this. It's basically this at the right quality. So this is why it's combined with these three outputs. So this is a kind of the first craft, which passes the items here for the second craft. And this is how many items I've placed. But I don't want this to be active. The items for the second craft, I don't want them to be active until I have placed the items for the first craft. And then these are all combined, and you can see what's in place for the first craft. It resets back to, and now it stops. And you can see when it finishes, it starts at the first, it starts at 50% productivity. It's just how it works. So it does the 50%, and now it starts again, and then it stops. Okay. Now, if you'll notice, I also have some -8, -8, -8 here. These are the stuff that remain in here. And when I start another cycle, I need to take them into account as if this inserter has already placed them. Unless I remove them, of course, and I go on to a different, a different quality craft. So this one, it has to be, also have to add to delay the signals here. It's just how the tick rates work out. These do nothing. They just delay the signal by 2 ticks. And then these get passed onto here. This one just checks, has the cycle started again, then send the reset signal. And this is the one that actually does this. If I have resetted, then take what I have in here. You can ignore this. Take what I have already, send it to here to pretend it's as if the inserter inserted it. So it gets -1, and then it gets added here. So that's how I take into account any materials that are already in there when I start a new cycle of 2 items. Okay, there's a few other things. This 2 signal, I also send it here. And there's a lot of stuff here, but for now, I just want you to focus on this 2 signal. So if the 2 is 0, right, if That means I'm still doing my first craft. There's no reason to place exactly 50, 50, 150, and 50 here. I know I'm going to do 2 crafts for sure. And normally this on its own is going to limit the stack size during the first craft. But I don't want to be limited. Okay. So this outputs an S signal, which gets passed onto here. It gets multiplied by 16. This could be 12 as well. And then it gets added to this one. I guess it could be 11 as well, since this will be at least 1. But anyway, this guarantees that the stack size will always be 12 while it's crafting the first of the 2 crafts. These 4 combinators keep track of whether we have enough items to go to a higher quality craft. Now, if we do, this gets passed on to here, which is just it's just an extra combinator. I just need it because of the limited selection of wires. And then this also gets passed here. This is also what allows us to place more items. Like I can say, for the first craft, now we will place more no matter what. But for the second craft, we might not want to stay to 50, 50, 150, and 50 if the next craft is also going to be normal quality. Right? If I know the next 2 are also going to be normal quality, then I can place more. So the way it works is it gets these signals. You see it outputted this, and I need this as soon as possible. It goes here and then checks, are all of these 0? If they're all of these 0, and I'm using normal, and I'm holding, how can I say, the next thing I want to place is normal quality, either this, any of the items, then you can place more. You don't need to limit the stack size. So that's what this says, that's what this says, and then it's kind of weird, but that's what this says. I've separated them. That's the deal. So there's one last thing here, but I'm not even sure if it's needed. I think it's still needed. At some point it was needed, but this just checks if I don't have any output anymore. This is just tick level stuff. So this combinator, sometimes it might have 0 output signals. But then while the change happens to the next cycle, it might play some, just for a single tick, it might play some stuff. And yeah, I'm not even sure if that's needed anymore, to be honest. I don't know. It's, yeah. I could try removing it and maybe update it later. But yeah, that's kind of it. So also it guarantees that this will very rarely take stuff out, and usually when it does, it's not that big of a deal. I think the only case this happens is if this places, if it thinks it's gonna do 2 more normal crafts, so this places more than 50, 50, 50, 150, it goes to like, something like this, 56, 56. And then while it's doing the first craft, this recycler finishes and one of these activates. That's the only case. It's a very rare case. I don't even know. I guess there would be a way to limit this, is to somehow check if I'm close to getting this, if I'm 1 recycling away or 2 recyclers away or something from getting the materials. I guess that would be one way to check, but yeah, I guess I haven't done that. I think that would add a lot more combinators as well, and it doesn't matter that much, honestly. But I'm pretty sure in theory you can do it that to reduce even more how often this needs to take stuff out. But already, like, it's so fast. Like, it's very rare, and in the worst case, it will have, I guess that was one example. That was an example right there. So yeah, long update. See you in part 5 if you watched all the way through, where I finally will talk about. I've actually recorded part 5, but I'm gonna re-record it because I did some extra stuff. So yeah.